Knowing the history of conservation is extremely important because history tends to repeat itself. And today, if we're going to continue our stewardship of natural resources, we must know the lessons that were laid before us by people like Henry David Thoreau and Aldo Leopold and John Muir.
What a brilliant idea to bring these three together. These three guys really are the holy trinity of conservation.
Myself and as Thoreau and John Muir and Aldo Leopold are all going to be here for the weekend talking about the history of conservation and environmentalism and how these three people really influence the environmental movements and conservation movements today.
I'm hopeful that what will happen is that we'll have a very large crowd of admirers of the environmental movement who will be coming to celebrate and to rejoice in the tremendous articulation of these wonderful people that help to frame the great debates that we have nowadays in terms of the environmental movement.
When I read the almanac, it was almost like some old uncle put his arm around me and said, "Hey man, I understand what you feel. I feel the same way, but don't despair. You know, let's go on a journey together and figure this out."
There's a magic in the gobble of the wild turkey or the booming of a prairie chicken or the splash of a bass that only those of us who have experienced it can share and convey to those who will follow us. I hope that each of you will capture that magic while you're here. Think about this opportunity of meeting Aldo Leopold or Henry David Thoreau or even John Muir up in his cabin in the High Sierra. You know, these are unbelievable experiences that are here for you right now. The call of conservation, you've answered, each of you in your own way. I thank you personally for that. That makes a difference, not just our generation, but to all those who will follow us.
My dad bought the farm in the early 80s, and for him it was a hobby farm. Black cows and fescue pasture. And when my father died, my brother and I shared ownership of it, and it for us became a recreational farm. Eventually we decided if it's just going to be a recreational farm, let's make it the best it can be. And if it were a place to hunt, we needed the very best habitat. So we had to do a little research and got a little help, and we improved the habitat, and in the process we got an education and maybe in some ways begin to understand what a conservation ethic was, what a land ethic was.
When we started, I don't know if we really knew what the best it could be was, but as we moved forward in restoring the land and consciously thought about moving it back toward pre-settlement, and as we pushed the land, gave it a shove, gave it an opportunity to maybe even just rest for a while, we recognized that people were interested when they came out. There's something that I think we innately need to be in the wild, whatever wild is for you. I mean, wild for some may only be a flower pot on their windowsill, but I think everybody needs a little bit of that touch of nature. The process of engagement really has honed us to realize that what we have, what we've done, really we just need to share it.
We had lots of people that were coming to the farm for a variety of reasons, but we were introducing them to our conservation message. The trouble with it, the weakness that we had, is I didn't have a place for people to stay. And I eventually struck on the idea of building something iconic, something with a conservation message, and it was a likeness of Henry David Thoreau's house on Walden Pond, and it was a likeness of Aldo Leopold's Sand County Shack, and a wall tent to represent John Muir, and that gave us then the Holy Trinity, the three icons of American conservation. Henry David Thoreau's perspective of conservation through the eyes of an environmentalist, and it's Muir's vision as a preservationist, and it was Aldo Leopold's as an ecologist. So you have those three perspectives, and you could have picked other people, but you really had to be careful to pick those with those three perspectives on conservation as an environmentalist, a preservationist, or an ecologist. Not thinking at the time that we were building them that it would be cool and breathe some life into them to get those reenactors here to bring Thoreau, Leopold, and Muir back to life. But it's exactly what we did.
The hospitality, the welcoming environment of Prairie Restoration Farm, where it's a beautiful place. There were creature comforts of food and drink, and you know, who wouldn't love to go to something like that? But then the superlative elements of speeches and chances to interact with these folks individually.
Where, by the way, in 1924, we created the first ever designated wilderness area. I am so proud of that.
It was a stunningly well done, well contrived immersion that was a real game changer.
I had 3 chairs, 1 for solitude, 2 for society, 3 for friendship.
Did you have many visitors?
Too many.
You know, the river down here can rush quite high in the springtime, and all manner of things come washing down river, and that's how we built a lot of the shacks, just things that wash down river and we could salvage, we would use it.
But Teddy, good Teddy. I never before had a more interesting or hearty or manly a companion. I fairly fell in love with him. And during our 3-day camping trip up there in the Yosemite, I stuffed him pretty well full of stories of the timber thieves and other spoilers of the forest. And that's a story that some of us are going to get bored at here.
Tickled to death that they're here and they seem to be enjoying themselves, being reincarnated from the dead. I think that's anybody we'd be happy to be resurrected from the dead, huh?
Bruce and Jan are special conservationists. They're special people. And what they've pulled off here is remarkable. They're going to have over 500 people here today from all over Missouri and all over the country, in fact, learning about conservation, learning about some of the pillars of what all of us are doing today stand upon. And it's just phenomenal how much of their heart and soul they've poured into this event, and they're doing it for all of us that are here.
It's really heartening to be with a group of other people who are like-minded and are as concerned about conserving what makes Missouri special, what makes America special. To all be together in one place, it's inspiring and it's motivating, and I think it helps energize each of us.
Under the big top shiitake, under this big tent, we had a stage. We had at one point in excess of 300 chairs, all of them filled, people standing. And these guys allowed us to step back in time.
And maybe we belong here now. Maybe we're not far away at all. Maybe we're as near as a wild thing in our hand, a broken wing, a broken spirit that we met.
We had each of those introduced by a fellow by the name of Doug Wood. And Doug Wood was an incredible musician. The reason we called upon Doug Wood is because he got it. He, in his music, in his personal philosophy, he understood Thoreau, Muir, and Leopold.
And our own ways, our own spirits that we met.
And we allowed their performance to be carried out chronologically. So we started about 1845 with Henry David Thoreau.
Thank you very much for having me here this evening. He is exactly right in saying that I rarely leave my customary seclusion. I certainly never come to the territories. I trust this will not be too transcendental for some of you ruffians. Every morning was a cheerful invitation to make my life of equal simplicity, and I may say innocence with nature herself. I have been as serene a worshiper of Aurora as the Greeks. I got up early and bathed in the pond. That was a religious exercise, and one of the best things which I did. I lecture, I give tours, I write, but I primarily portray Henry David Thoreau at Walden Pond State Reservation. And so to be able to portray him, to not only use his words, but to put his words into context, to show people that he was a real breathing person, with attitude and with opinions, I think is really important. And plus I get to wear really cool clothes. If you have built castles in the air, your work need not be lost. That is where they should be. Now, put the foundations under them. Thank you very much.
And then we moved a little forward and we had John Muir speak. And it was Lee Stetson who embodied the spirit of John Muir. We couldn't have come any closer to meeting those guys in the flesh than if we had lived back in their time. Because these guys were just incredible historic reenactors.
But still I do detect some surprise. Oh, perhaps some doubt that the spirit of old John Muir still wanders on this good planet. And well, I can appreciate that doubt, for I too, I have heard the rumor that I died. and long ago, they say, out of a broken heart, or a shattered spirit from the loss of the Hetch Hetchy Valley, that other magnificent Yosemite-type valley, not far from the valley there that, well, I fought so long, so hard to protect and to no avail. And well, I suppose that there's a great deal of romance attached to the idea of dying of a broken heart. But well, think on it. If we wilderness lovers died every time we lost a place we loved, well, our species would have long ago gone the way of the dodo bird. It was always us, eh?
Well, I actually present the character of John Muir in a variety of different productions, not only in Yosemite National Park, where I work every summer and have for now 34 years, but around the country and occasionally outside of the country.
Never before did I experience such a noble exhilaration of motion. The slender top fairly flapped and swished in the passionate torrent, bending, backwards and forwards, going round and around, tracing indescribable combinations of vertical and horizontal curves, while I clung with muscles firm braced like a bobolink on a reed. Happy me.
Perhaps most of all, what attracted me was the tremendous poetry of his words. His is a very eloquent, simple, lovely truth that I think anybody could to read, to understand, and come away with a better understanding of where they are in the universe.
And that has been the history of every reservation ever since. As soon as they are created, the thieves and the devil and his relations come forward to attack them. And, well, I doubt not that if all of the rest of our beautiful wilderness were utterly stripped away from us, and there remained only one tree, one tree reserved as the most noble and glorious, well, it would not be long before you would find a lumberman and a lawyer at the foot of it.
And after John Muir, we moved forward and into the time of Aldo Leopold, who gave an incredible and emotional performance. And I think most people in the audience were literally spellbound.
Life in Arizona was bounded overhead by sky, underfoot by grama grass, and on the horizon by Escudilla. Now that mountain Escudilla bounded not only our work and play, but our ability to get a good supper as well. I remember many winter evenings headed out to the river flat to try and ambush a mallard, only to see the wary flock circle the rosy west, the steely north, and then disappear into the inky black of Escudilla.
Somebody who knew me well said, "You should read this book," and gave me the title. I had a bookstore right around the corner from my little apartment. I picked it up and started reading, and I have it with me here in Missouri, that same copy. I've been reading it for 30 years. I do this one story because that's how I need to do it, and the story's too important to me to not do it. Leopold is the story I need to tell, and this is the way that I found to tell it.
When our rifles were empty, the old wolf was down, and a pup was dragging a leg into impassable slide rock. We reached the old wolf in time to watch a fierce green fire dying in her eyes. And I realized then, and have known ever since, that there was something new to me in those eyes, something known only to her and to the mountain. But I was young, I was full of trigger itch, and I thought that because fewer wolves meant more deer, then no wolves would mean hunter's paradise. But after seeing that green fire die, I sensed that neither the wolf nor the mountain agree with such a view.
I don't think that this exists anywhere else in the world. I think only in America would you have somebody that devoted their life to a characterization of a historic figure, and then to see the most preeminent ones in natural resource stewardship in world history at the same place at the same time. What's not to love about that?
It's perfect. It was a great day. Weather cooperated with us, and I couldn't be happier. You know, I have a whole stack of cards and letters that people had written me, emails that they had written, and just how fascinated they were, how inspired they were by the messages, how anxious they were for us to do this again. Really worth it. It was really worth it.
Wind sends old trees crashing, but their sky greets the dawn. I think of friends who fought my fight. They tumble, now they're gone. Now who will love the land? Who will help us understand? Who will hold the sky up now the big trees are down?